I've been emailed a couple times. People are asking me, how do you make a shoe? Well, I use Hexagon, and I use a Meshmixer. I start out by making the sole. Now I'm doing this freehand just for demonstration purposes right now. I'm making a faceted polygon first. It's going to be pretty sloppy. You can also, take an image of a sole in GIMP 2.6, and with your mouse you can find the location of every pixel along the edge of the sole. And as you draw out your rough sole, you can go and adjust all the points in that sole so that they match the image, and you'll have a perfect sole that way. This one's just freehand, like I said, for demonstration purposes, so it's going to be kind of quick and nasty. The facet tool is kind of cool because you can create just a single plane, and then later with the thickness tool you can make it thick. First you have to tessellate it, increase the mesh so that it's not just a group of points. You actually have polygons in there. So I'm going to take you through that process right now, and I'm going to tessellate it. And if you keep an eye on the screen, you'll notice that as I tessellate it, you're going to see several polygons start to form. Any minute now. Sometimes I forget what I'm doing. I don't use Hexagon a lot, so navigation and the tools kind of mystify me from time to time. I have to reacquaint myself with them. So anyway, it's tessellated, and now I use the thickness tool, and I've got a thick sole. Probably thicker than it should be. I like to keep it thinner, but like I said, this is demonstration purposes only. So now that I've got enough polygons in there, the sole looks pretty good. Pretty sure it should be time now to just go ahead and take it and let's see. Let's go ahead and save it. Save it as an object file so I can take it into Meshmixer. I'm just going to call it example shoe sole, or example sole. Oops, don't do that, yeah. Okay, open up Meshmixer. Inside here, I'm going to remesh parts of the sole so that they're easier to work with to make the shoe. Let's find it first. Try to keep all my 3D stuff organized by the shapes and types of stuff. What did I do with this? Am I in the wrong directory here? Let's go to the right one. Okay, there's your sole. Now you notice all that sort of distortion around the edges. It happens a lot when you transfer over from Hexagon to Meshmixer. We can fix that up just by remeshing it. Luckily, we've got some vertex scripts here. Notice the edge around the sole is green, so it's been grouped already for us. So we're going to just go ahead and remesh that look how smooth it is. See, we're increasing the polygon count here to make it smoother. I think Meshmixer is far superior to remeshing than Hexagon is, or Sculptris for that matter. So now I'm going to do the flat part because all these triangles are not easy to work with or manipulate. So we're going to remesh that, smooth it out 100%, and remesh it 100%. Add as many polygons as we can. This is the bottom of the sole, so it doesn't need to be as high as the top. You'll see why in a minute. This is the top. We really want a lot of polygons in here. So I'm going to mesh this twice, remesh this twice, I mean. Now we're going to start working with it. First thing I do is I use the transform to shrink the selected part of the sole. And now I'm going to start forming the top of the sole using this transform tool. And I'll keep the clip at normal pace for a few of these sections so you get an idea of what I'm doing here. See, shrank it, so I've accepted that shrink. Now I'm going to go ahead and transform it again to form the first rise of the toe. And it's a little higher than it really should be, but I wanted you to be able to see it. Notice I rise. Now I'm going to grow it a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed, like shoes, they kind of come down into the sole. Now this sole is real flat, but don't worry about this right now. We'll take care of that in the second part. Now I don't bother clearing this because I'm going to incrementally shape the sole using this transform tool. Now this is the second part. See, I've just kept the group selected, and as you accept this transform, it creates a new ring of polygons, and it's a whole new group. So see, your top there remains selected, so you can just keep working that way. And this isn't going to be the perfect shape. I'm going to have to tune that up later, but using the transform tool we can get really close, and what we do is we create an even mesh, more or less. It's more uniform and easier to work with when it comes to actually shaping the shoe. I'm sure there's easier ways to do this. I mean, for one, you could probably scan it. That would be easier, but where would be the fun in that, you know? It's just scanning it. And mainly it's not what we do stuff like this for. So I had experimented with just taking primitive spheres and shaping them and putting them together, but this seems to be the best method so far. It comes out with a more realistic looking shoe every time. And of course this one's not going to look realistic because, like I said, I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. I'm going to speed this up so that you don't have to sit here all day and see layer by layer. And basically I'm just dubbing this narrative in here. I'm not working on this right now. I'm following the video. So you can see I'm just building it up, and it's all kind of flat. It's taking on a basic shoe form. A few deformities here and there that will need to be tuned up. But the thing I like about it is the mesh is staying more like a grid, and it's easier to work with and simulate the look of leather, I think. Now I'm taking the Verdus color off so that I can smooth it out. It's too hard doing the smoothing and shaping of the shoe and with the Verdus color because, or with group colors, because you can't really get an idea of the shape. It's all colorized like that. I'm working out some of the wrinkles. Now I'm using the regular smooth tool, and I'm using the bubble smooth, and I'm using the reduce smooth here tools, and those brushes are great to interchange to get to the point you want to be. The smooth tool is very aggressive, and it will smooth out a lot of stuff real fast. The reduce and the bubble shrink will smooth it out evenly. The bubble smooth and the reduce shrink will smooth it out very evenly. The bubble tool will help you put in more contours, basically, that better. Excuse me, that's my chair. It's very noisy. Gotta get a new one. So it's starting to take on the shape. I also like to use the inflate tool wherever I screw up. Now, right now, I'm going to regroup it so that I can. The nice thing about the bubble tools and a lot of the brushes is you can restrict them to groups so that you don't mess around with your sole. You want to keep your sole free of anything. Just you want it flat and the edges sharp. So it's always good if you work on the bubble tool with restricted to groups and maintain boundaries so that it doesn't distort the boundaries between the sole and the top of the shoe. Now this is the reduce or the bubble smooth right now, and the bubble smooth is smoothing out some of what the inflate. The inflate tends to distort a little bit. It's not really even. It's not like sculptures. You have to use a combination to get smooth shapes with this. So this is kind of sped up too. Excuse me. And I'm putting in some wrinkles here and there. I use the plane cut so that I can level the shoe off, make it look more like the top of a shoe. Now I'm using the transform tool to put in an ankle again. This helps prevent the top of the shoe from getting distorted when you're working on the edge of it. You can remove it later. Sometimes I just leave it so that I can just unify it to the pants. Taking the whole shoe back in the Hexagon now. The reason for that is Hexagon has this really sweet bending tool. Shoes aren't flat like that. So what you want to do is you want to bend the sole so that it looks like a real shoe. We're going to do that. And basically what you do in Hexagon is you import the object, which is our shoe here, that we kind of semi-finished in a Meshmixer. Now with the line tool we're going to describe an arc. Now you can have an extreme arc, which is good if like he's stepping or about to step or something, and your figure's about to step. So you can make the arc really extreme, and which I'll demonstrate right here. didn't quite work. With the arcing tool or the curve tool, you can set more than 1 point. I'm just going to set 1 point here. And this is going to be kind of an extreme and not really a full step, but just to give you an idea of how much you can bend this shoe in the tool. Now you go to Utilities. You got to select your shoe though first. Go to your Utilities tab in Hexagon and select the bend, and then you select the curve you just made. See how bent that is? That could be like he's almost beginning a step, but we don't really want to quite. We want the natural bend as if it's standing. So we're going to get rid of this curve. And I'm going to make a new line. And it's going to be a gentler curve, so it's more like a natural standing position, or the shoe's not being used, it's just sitting in a corner somewhere. I haven't added a heel right now. It's not a good idea to add the heel till after you've bent the shoe, because the bend tool bends everything. Sometimes get confused in Hexagon. Like I said, I don't use Hexagon a lot, but for certain things it's good. If you're going to sculpt for free, you got to take all the tools and learn how to use them. I use Hexagon, I use Sculptures, I use Meshmixer, I use MeshLab, I use Wings 3D, I use Blender. All free tools, including Daz Studio. You can pick that up for free too. And for a while, Hexagon was coming with Daz Studio. So anyway, I'll export it again. I think I'll call it example shoe bent. And I'll show you how to add some details, like stitching and stuff like that. Meshmixer again. There we go, we got our bent shoe, slightly bent. We're already in group coloring, so we gotta. There's a nice little option here in the edit tools. You can have it generate face groups. Sometimes they don't turn out. As you can see, the band around the edge of the sole is all a bunch of different groups. But we need to remesh that. So I'm just going to quickly swipe around and select all the groups, I hope, and regroup it so that it's one group. Then we'll remesh it. Grouping is really a great way to work on this, especially in if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff in Meshmixer. You want to keep your groups separated. Otherwise, Meshmixer tends to round everything off or try to smooth it out. And I think it's an attempt to beautify the mesh, but it ends up looking pretty ugly, and it's not what you want. So anyway, I'm going to make that a group now. There we go, we've got our own separate group for the edge of the sole. Now I'm going to remesh it so that it smooths out. You notice how it's got all that distortion in there? It's caused by the bending tool in Hexagon. Add a bunch of polygons and some smoothing on it. keep an eye on the polygon count. See how it changes? There we go. That should be smooth. We got a little dimple in there, but we'll fix that later. Now we're going to remesh the bottom of the sole and the top of the sole. Check everything out though, make sure I've got all these facets smoothed and remeshed. I didn't miss any. Let's go to the bottom of the sole and remesh that. It hasn't really increased it too much, but it's good enough. Now, once you finish adding detail and to the shoe and you've got everything done, you can go ahead and remesh the shoe for a lower polygon count, and it will be one contiguous mesh without grouping. And it, if you use the absolute option, it'll keep its shape and form and look pretty good, but you won't have the tons of polygons that you're going to have in this shoe just to add detail. It'll reduce them all nicely. But for now we want all these so that we can create the detail that will make it look like a shoe. Well, as far as we can with this. I'm not taking my time on it. I'm doing it as quickly as possible, just for demonstration purposes, so that I could show it to you in real time too, instead of speeding it up, doing time lapse like I usually do. The thing with the tongue, now I'm creating the heel here. And I do that by selecting the bottom group and then eliminating this part of it as a selection until I've got a rough out of the heel. Now all that area there is going to be jagged. As you can see, you need a straight line to create a heel, otherwise it's going to look like crap. So use a smoothing tool. And it straightens it out. It's a little bit curved, but that's okay. And later on you can take and use a Boolean difference and create a straight edge there by just importing a cube and using Boolean differences. But I'm not going to do this here. You could probably figure that out on your own. Now I'm pulling the heel out, curve it a little bit, or put an angle on it so it looks like a natural heel. It's kind of crappy, but I don't want to spend a lot of time perfecting it. I'm not even working from a sketch of a shoe right now. This is all from memory, and yeah, I hope you'll forgive it. It's pretty crude, but it does look like a shoe. This is how I do it. This is what it looks like without the group colors. Now, shoes have top stitching, and I don't know all the anatomy of a shoe, but I can see it. And we're going to kind of put the different sections of the shoe in. I do that by selecting a group of polygons and smoothing them, and it creates their own face group. But first I want one contiguous group for the whole shoe. I want to start out, because there's a few spots in here that weren't, for some reason Meshmixer decided were part of another group, even though they're right in the center of one group. So we're going to deal with all that. I don't want my ankle being a part of any group. That's just a placeholder there to keep the edges from collapsing. So I'm deselecting the ankle. Create a group, one contiguous group here for the shoe top. Now let's it's good. Some of those edges were rough, so right. Now I'm going to cut out the toe of the shoe and make another separate group for that. And you'll see why I'm doing this in a few seconds. Shoes are very, very interesting. I could spend a whole day on a shoe. And the nice thing about working in 3D is you literally only have to spend a full day on one shoe, because you can mirror the shoe once you finish one. And then add a few details to make it look like its own unique shoe. So now I've defined this section of the shoe. It looks good, and I'm going to smooth it out. So all the lines are nice and smooth. I put it on a range of influence down to 0 because I don't want to influence the shape of anything else around it when I'm doing the smoothing. Looks pretty good. Now you see I've got my own group for this section of the shoe. I'm going to cut out the tongue here. And again, I apologize. This is very quick. I'm not. It's turning out actually fairly good. I don't have a shoe here to look at. I normally work barefoot, so looks pretty good actually. I might actually keep this one. Work on it a little bit more after this demonstration. Just so you know, this demonstration is only showing you Meshmixer and Hexagon. Later on I'll probably take this shoe, because it is starting to look pretty good, and work on it a little bit in Sculptress too. There I can add, use the creasing tool. They have a really nice creasing tool option, and their pinch tool is really good. Oops. Now I'm going to make the heel section of the shoe. I might actually turn this into a boot. A work boot or something. Pretty sure this section goes all the way to the edge of the heel. I have to find one of my old boots and now, a good idea would be to save your work as a project so that it remains grouped until you're absolutely sure that your shoe is done. It looks like a shoe. I'm not going to do this because it's demonstration purposes. So I'm just going to be exporting it as an object. Smooth it. Looks fairly good. Take that range of influence down. There we go. now I have a bunch of groups that designate the parts of the shoe. I'm going to start adding a little detail. I use the bubble. I'll restrict it to groups and restrict the influence on the boundaries of the boundary state. Put. To work with this a little bit. It's a little too much of a bubble, and I can adjust it. You don't see me moving my mouse to make the adjustments on the brush properties and stuff, because I use the keyboard for that. That way I don't lose my place on the project. Putting in the seams, they always bulge a little bit. Probably not this much. But I am moving kind of fast, and I'll refine it a little, but I'm not, in this demonstration, I'm not going to spend a lot of time making those seams look really good. I'm just going to show you how you can make them. And it's nice because, see, as you can see, the restricting it to the group, it doesn't go outside of the boundaries of the group and create an inflated surface. And the more I think about it, I think I'm going to, after the demonstration, I'll probably work on this shoe a little bit more. I think I'll turn it into a boot. Oh, and I'm not going to show you the laces, but it's done pretty much the same way. Now I've enabled the refinements so that it'll add additional polygons in these areas to help smooth them out, so it's not so chunky looking. The bubble tool is kind of a chunky tool. I'll use the smooth brush. The bubble smooth brush is a lot more refined. Come out with smoother lines. Then the reduce brush, which will smooth everything out pretty good. But you have to start with the inflate tool first. Now you could probably use the draw tool to do this same thing, but I haven't noticed much of a difference between the two. Neither of them is smooth. You really have to use these bubble smooth tool. Let's see. Kind of knocks down some of the chunkiness there. Now there's more to a shoe than just these seams. Normally I build up the bulges around the laces too, using the same method. I'm going to fix that nick there. It's bothered me. The groups come in handy. A little bit better. Shoes are very interesting. This is really I'm not going to finish this one here, but this is enough information for you so that you don't get too bored with the demonstration, and you can start out on your own. And again, like I said, there are probably easier and better ways to do this. You can build it like polygon by polygon, or you can even scan it if that's your thing. I mean, some people probably do scan them. I don't have a scanner, so I don't think I would anyway, because it is kind of fun just to do it. The nice thing about doing this shoe is it's print ready too, basically. I mean, if you want to just send this shoe off to the printer as it is, it'll print out fine. Probably should hollow it out, save money on materials, but it'll print. There are no holes in it. And just for a rough start, quick start, it's not bad. Like I said, I think I'm going to keep this shoe. I think I'm going to work on this a little bit more. Add it to my folder full of clothing parts and maybe use it on another sculpt. Hey, thanks.